Hello my friends, and welcome to another edition of Story Time, where I tell you my favorite stories from my 50 years here on planet Earth. And today I want to tell you a story about Choo and the puff adder. Choo was our little dachshund terrier mix. I'm not sure what she was bred with, but it definitely wasn't a purebred dachshund. But we had Choo when we first got into East Africa, and for 4 years in Nairobi, then brought her back to Texas, where we lived in a year in Texas, and then brought her back to Africa with us. So she traveled more miles than many Americans do in their whole life, back and forth to Africa twice. And she was always a sweetheart of a dog, although she had some kind of irritating parts about her too. Like, for instance, she would get down in the bottom of the bed, she would sleep in the bed with you, and she would snuggle up down there by your feet. But then, I mean, if you moved your feet around, then she bites you on the toe, and you're like, get out of here, Choo. I ain't gonna let you sleep with me. You ain't gonna be biting me on the feet. So we have to get her out of there. But anyway, she was a real member of the family. We loved her very dearly. And I can remember I got home from school one day. We'd walked back from the bus, and we got off there, and I saw Choo was laying down, in the driveway, very still. And it wasn't that unusual, because a lot of times she would sleep in the driveway. But she was just completely still. And I went over there to her, and her whole side of her face was completely swollen. And I pushed on her, and nothing happened. And I realized that something serious had happened. It looked like she'd been snake bit. And so I got a mirror out and put it under her nose, and Daddy came out and Jim came out, and we were all looking at her, and we could see that there was no breath coming from her nose, so we could tell that Choo had died. Well, my mother was completely heartbroken over this. I mean, Choo was like another child in our family. In our Cummins family, we have a tendency to just treat, all our dogs like they're part of the family. So, I mean, Mom was like in the bed for a couple of days with grief over our little dog Choo. Well, even as much as you've heard about me working with snakes and stuff like this, I wasn't about to let this snake live. So I was asking, Pierce, who was one of the guys that worked for us, where was this snake? Where did it happen? And he took us back to the backyard. And at that time, on our, we had like this kind of like a ranch, I guess. It wasn't a huge place. It was about 5 acres we had. And we went back on part of the ranch, and we went over there, and you could see where this aardvark ant bear had dug this hole in the ground. And they're a pretty good sized animal, and they dig holes about, I don't know, about 1.5 feet, something like that, wide, something like that. So and that they had said that the snake had bit Choo had gone down into this hole. Well, my brother and I had talked about this, and how we were going to kill this snake. So we decided that we needed to bait it. So I went out and I shot a bird. I don't know, I kill a lot of birds. It's ironic now because I'm so into birds and feeding birds and taking care of birds. And when I was young, when I was in middle school, and I don't know how many birds I shot, but a lot. But I never really shot sunbirds, because they were like the equivalent of kind of like a hummingbird. I mean, it just, why would you shoot a sunbird? But, but I needed the bait, so I shot one of these sunbirds, and still feel bad about that to this day, honestly. But I put it out in this, by the entrance of this aardvark hole to wait for this puff adder. And my brother and I both had our pellet guns, and they were single shot pellet guns. I mean, you have to shoot, and then you have to reload, shoot again. It had those kind of things that, you broke them down, you put the pellet in, you pull it back up, and shoot again. It pumped up with the air like that. So Jim and I went out there, and we waited, I don't know, an hour or so. And sure enough, that snake started to creep up out of that hole, smelling that dead bird, wanted to come and eat that bird. So we waited, and I talked to Jim, and another thing about snakes that you may not know is that, they do not have external ears, so they cannot hear you talking, but they can hear you walking. So you have to sit very quietly and stuff, because they can feel the vibrations through the ground. But just Mr. Tim's tip for you today is, if you're ever in the bush or walking around a forest or whatever like that, and you are you're not not sure about whether they're snakes or not, always just kind of walk heavy because that tends to scare them out of the way. But the thing about puff adders is they are a ambush predator, a very kind of a diamondback kind of rattlesnake pattern, except they're fatter than rattlesnakes, but they are in a similar family, so they do have the same kind of fold out fangs that bite you, as opposed to a cobra who has a fixed fang. So more people are bitten by puff adders than green mambas, because puff adders tend to stand or lay there in the path and wait for some animal to come right up to them, and then they bite them. So people tend to step on them when they're out in the field, whereas most snakes will run away. So we waited for this snake to come out. Sure enough, it did. We saw its big old head, and its head was about like this big, something like that. And a kind of a triangular shaped thing, and it started coming out, and I was looking at Jim like, wait, so it came out a little bit slower. Hang on, Jim, don't do anything yet, Jim. So came on out a little bit more, and we could see it. It had about 3/4 of its body out, and then I whispered over to Jim, I'll shoot first and you shoot it, we'll get him in the head. So I took a draw bead on it, and bam! And Jim shot right after me, bam! And then we immediately broke down the thing and put 2 more pellets in there, bam! And then Jim shot again, bam! So we put 4 pellets right in the center of its head, right in the back like this, and it just kind of curled up and looked like that. So we got one of our big knives. We had these machete-looking things that in Kiswahili we called a panga, and so we just bam, 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 chopped its head off, and pulled the rest of the snake out, and the Africans, they were like, wow, man, nyoka mkubwa, which means big snake. Yeah, and it was big. It was about, I don't know, in all it was over 3 foot long, and even though the snake is dead and the head is decapitated, I mean, it's not part of the body, it can still bite, it can still has poison and stuff like this, or venom. So we dig a hole, with the machete, and bury the thing and plug it all up, and then cut the skin off to take the skin off it, so we had some memento of this great killing our dog. So it didn't bring Choo back, but it sure did make us feel better, and could have saved some lives of some kids around there stepping on it too. So anyway, that was another story time.